showcasing that opportunity that there are plenty of roles based in, metropolitan cities, I think really showed me that there was a path for me in agriculture, and tying that then back to the mission of, feeding the world, producing less carbon, and, with a rapidly growing population as well. It's a pretty fulfilling mission to get behind.
The world is facing incredible challenges at the moment, and agriculture is right at the centre of them. Feeding a global population headed past 9 billion people within the next decade, dealing with climate change sending shockwaves through our seasons, the exponential explosion of artificial intelligence, and the unprecedented societal pressures for sustainable practices. To tackle these challenges, Australian agriculture needs people. As well as more farm workers, we need skills like machinery engineers, software developers, marketers, financiers, the list goes on. In fact, for every student who graduates with an agriculture-related degree in Australia, there are 6 jobs currently available in the agricultural economy. So where are all of these people going to come from? That's the question to be explored in this, the final episode of Season 1 of Unearthed, the AgriFutures podcast all about the people changing Australian agriculture. I'm Michael Thompson. Part of the answer to this question is counterintuitive. We're going to start our search for agricultural people in the big smoke.
Grew up and have lived my whole life in Sydney. My parents are both lawyers who work in the city, so no real family connection to agriculture.
Ben Peden is an implementation consultant at ag software company AgriWeb, based in Sydney. When he was enrolled for high school at Barker College on Sydney's North Shore, agriculture was definitely not on his radar.
Fortunately, stumbled across it in high school in, I believe it's year 9 is the year, so 14, 15 is when I picked it as a subject. I originally chose agriculture because my older brother told me that you get to spend more time out, with chickens or in the veggie garden than you have to in the classroom. And as a 15-year-old, I'm sold.
And had you been on a farm before you went to, started studying agriculture?
I think we had a couple holidays into the country where we might have done those farm tours where they put you in the back of a big trailer and, show you all the different animals and things. But I've got vague memories of that, but definitely nothing more practical than that.
So other than getting to spend a bit of time outside in the veggie patch and with the chooks, what did you find interesting about studying agriculture at Barker?
I think the Barker model was really incredible in the sense that they got me in the door by getting to be out of the classroom and sort of positioned it as a way to understand where your food's coming from and positioning it as that paddock to plate sort of model, which I think as a young person growing up who enjoys their food, I found that really interesting. I want to know where the food I'm buying comes from. As it sort of shifted to be a bit more academic and less time out with the animals, I think the model is really good at sort of showcasing that whether you're into your science, you're into your commerce, geography, whatever it is you're really keen on, there is a role for you that can use those skills in agriculture.
With so many jobs on offer and such diversity of career paths, why aren't more young people like Ben embracing agriculture as a subject at school and pursuing it further at university? Amy Cosby is the director of the Institute for Future Farming Systems at Central Queensland University. She leads Australia's only research team dedicated to investigating what's going on in agricultural classrooms in order to improve ag education delivery, workforce participation, and community understanding of food and fibre. In 2021, her team delivered the landmark Ag Knowledge Report, detailing results of a survey of more than 5,000 primary and secondary students across Australia.
Even though we've got a lot of ag education activities occurring, there is that still traditional thought that if you work in agriculture, you need to be a farmer. So you need to come off a farm, you need to have land to go back to. So people still see the number one job in agriculture as a farmer, and they don't know anything about all the other jobs out there, being an agricultural business banker, working in marketing, being a scientist, working in the technology. So as we have more and more technology in ag, not only do we need the people to invent the technology that works for people on the land, but also fix it and also train people to how to use it. So there's this really, really vast number of careers out there in agriculture that young people and probably even older people don't know about.
There are also some more fundamentally worrying sort of stats that came out of that in terms of knowledge of where food and fibre comes from. What were some of the standout figures that, really blew your mind?
Yeah, so more than half of young people thought that cows on dairy farms were milked by hand. Coming off a dairy farm or living on a dairy farm now, I can assure you that we don't milk one cow by hand, let alone a couple of hundred a day. So I think if you are thinking to work on a dairy farm or in agriculture, it's all really hard manual labor. That's probably enough to put you off considering a career in the industry.
Yeah, I
Also,
wouldn't want to do that.
no, it's hard work milking cows by hand, and not only do we not do that, we've got milking clusters that you put on, but now you've got robots, so you don't even need to put those cups on yourself. The cow walks in and eats and gets milked at the same time. So we've still got some really basic knowledge about agriculture in Australia that we need to shift.
So, scratching beneath the surface a bit there, Amy, what's the source of that lack of knowledge? Has it been poor teaching or poor marketing by the ag industry, or a bit of both?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I think, a generation probably just previous to ours, you knew someone on the farm, you knew someone who worked in agriculture. And as we increasingly become urbanized, young people, even those living in rural and regional towns, don't actually have a connection, a direct connection with someone working in agriculture. I think there's a real misconception that if you live in rural Australia, you understand where your food and fibre comes from better than our metro counterparts. But we know that's not the case. That young people, even in rural towns, don't know where their food comes from, don't have that connection, and therefore are just as much of a lack of knowledge that our other people in metro areas are. So and with that comes teachers that don't understand agriculture as well. So, same sort of concept. If they don't have that direct, if they don't have a positive perception of the industry, if they're only reading what's in the papers, the radio, on social media, they may be hearing some really negative things about our industry and then taking that into the classroom.
But there's also an element of just not wanting to be an ag teacher. What do you know about the numbers of people actually wanting to be ag teachers?
We have a dearth of ag teachers in Australia. In all states and territories, we don't have very many universities offering ag teaching, and those that do have a degree, there's not that many people enrolled. And I think that comes with it's a teaching is tricky, but being an ag teacher can be even trickier if you've got a school farm or all the extracurricular that comes with that animal ethics of having to check the animals at the school farm every day of the year. There's a lot of added pressure, and I think that school farms and agriculture in schools generally is not funded or supported enough. But then there's also this a lack of teachers out there. So lots of people that are teaching ag, they might be the science teacher, they might have had a connection to agriculture a long time ago and they're like, oh, you can be the teacher. So they don't necessarily know, I guess, best practice for teaching ag to kids. And that means that the classes what we've got in the classroom is not a real true reflection of what the skills and knowledge that industry needs.
So, what needs to happen to change that dynamic? I mean, is it as simple as just providing those teachers with bare knowledge of agriculture more resources, or does it need to be a deeper, impactful program than just rolling out more lesson plans off the shelf?
Yeah, 100% needs to be a more collaborative, deep dive into what agriculture looks like in lots of different ways. So there is, thousands of schools across Australia all have different barriers and challenges. So we can't have a one size fits all approach. And what we need is to provide students from metro areas, rural and regional and remote opportunities to connect with the agricultural industry through incursions, bringing people into the classroom and talking about what they do, and also contributing to teaching, showing how we use technology and data. But more importantly, we need to welcome young people on into our agricultural businesses and farms so that they can see the technology that's used every single day, but not just the technology, the science, the business and marketing skills, the communication. But we've got to move away from you have to be a farmer, you have to be from the country or even off the land to do so. And I think there's this added benefit for investment in agricultural education. It's not just about workforce. Our young people are our next generation consumer. So they're the ones that are going to go to the supermarket or the shops and buy clothes and food. And we want them to understand that Australia produces the best and the safest food and to choose Australian grown. So for me, it's not just about workers, it's about or employees or careers. It's about showing and improving and maintaining our social license to operate. That's why ag education is crucial for everyone.
Enter AgriFutures Australia, which in November launched the National Schools Food and Fibre Strategy, an unprecedented collaboration between all 15 rural research and development corporations to transform how Australian students learn about the nation's $80 billion food and fibre sector.
I guess this strategy came about because there is this recognition that although food and fibre education is being taught really well by some schools, that it lacks consistent traction across Australia in primary and secondary schools. Really, we want to see more food and fibre content taught in Australian schools. So we want students and educators to understand what amazing careers are out there in food and fibre and inspire kids to enter those careers. And we want kids to understand where their food comes from and be able to make those purchasing decisions. So really what the strategy is aiming to do is try and integrate food and fibre education more thoroughly into the school systems in both dedicated agriculture subjects, but also in those other subjects, so in English and maths and science, so seeing agriculture as examples in those subjects.
Leading the development of the national strategy was Brooke Hermans, an associate with RMCG Consulting.
We went out and spoke to educators, to principals, to people running programs in food and fibre education outside of school systems, to state departments who influence curriculum, to the ACARA who did write the national curriculum. So we did that through interviews, through workshops, through online surveys. We did some face-to-face engagement. And in the end, we spoke to over 900 people who have a passion for food and fibre education. It's really interesting how passionate people are about this subject and how involved they wanted to be in the strategy.
If there's a strategy being developed at a national level, what does that say about how it's been taught in the past in schools across Australia?
Yeah, it's a good question because what we see is that there's some awesome examples of how schools are teaching food and fibre, and there's some just absolute champions out there doing it. But it's different in each location, in each school, in each state. And so, for example, if we look at the numbers of students studying dedicated agriculture subjects, that's reasonable in New South Wales. But you look at the other states, so look at Victoria or Western Australia, and it's actually really low. So kids aren't choosing to study agriculture. And what we heard through the development of the strategy is that teachers don't feel confident integrating food and fibre education into other subjects either. And so, what we're seeing is, yes, there's some dedicated agriculture subjects being taught and really well in some states, but there's not that level of confidence in a lot of teachers to teach food and fibre education in our schools.
Is that one of the factors contributing to the lower enrolments in agriculture-related subjects in those states that you mentioned?
Unless you have this champion in your school that's, championing agriculture and food and fibre, often kids just aren't exposed to food and fibre anymore. They're not exposed to farms. They haven't been to a farm. And then if they don't have someone inspiring them in the school environment, they never consider a career in agriculture or understand even where their food and fibre comes from.
I asked CQU's Amy Cosby what professional development for an agriculture teacher should look like when it's done well.
We can't just be doing the same way of teacher professional development that we've done for decades. So our team has been going into schools and modelling how you can teach ag tech and science in agriculture in the classroom, teaching it to the students and then having the teachers be engaged and seeing how that works. The teachers see how we do it. They see how the students react to it and what they learn. they can then go, oh, hang on a minute, that will work. They've learnt from us, and they can take it into other classrooms and into other years.
A lot of the work that we're suggesting in the strategy isn't actually about directly connecting with the students. It's about connecting with the teachers, the educators, and giving them the skills and confidence to teach food and fibre and inspiring them to teach food and fibre. It's about connecting with the school leaders, so the principals and the decision makers who choose whether food and fibre is taught in dedicated subjects. And it's about skilling the schools up to be able to communicate with parents about what opportunities are out there in the food and fibre sector.
Sometimes that means leaning into what a teacher already knows or the skills available within their community.
One moment stands out where I interviewed a textiles teacher, and she was from Broadmeadows in Melbourne, so a very urban school, but she'd come off a wool farm. And so she was connecting her kids with wool production through textiles. And it was awesome what she was doing. But she said this thing to me where she said, most of the teachers in this school have never been to a farm. We're an urban school, and most of the teachers have never been to a farm. So how can you expect them to teach food and fibre? And for me, that just, there was that light bulb moment where I went, how can we ask these people to be comfortable teaching this subject? They've never done that. They don't know how important it is. They really don't understand the context at all. And so, how we've tried to address that in the strategy is in a few ways. And one is about trying to provide professional development for teachers, but also communicate with them to remove some of those misconceptions they might have about food and fibre industries, and then also provide opportunities where they can actually connect with food and fibre industries, with people who are doing this stuff locally, and give them real life examples that help to inspire them and bring real life things into the classroom.
It's a similar technique to that used by Ben Pedon's agriculture teacher back at Barker College. Scott Graham is the head of the agriculture department at Barker and also sits on the executive of the New South Wales Association of Agriculture Teachers.
Everyone eats every day. We all wear clothes. And I think it really works when you connect kids to what they already know. And I think, so we would say rather than paddock to plate, we're a bit more plate to paddock, so to speak. And we get kids started at what they know. They all know, it doesn't matter where they've come from. They all know, the food they like, but they don't know where it's come from necessarily or how it's been produced. And they are interested in that. And I think when they move along and progress to year 11 and 12, in our context, the academic rigor in year 11 and 12, in the syllabus and the expectations from teachers and parents and stuff like that really ramps up across the school. And I think we have to do that in agriculture as well. We need to ramp up the academic expectation, and therefore we quite heavily publish back the results, that we get in the HSC, for example, in year 12. We're very happy to promote those back to students to say, look, you can do agriculture and do really well, and have a job that's meaningful and purposeful. Students love getting into agriculture, especially those maybe above average academically. They have a few different options available to them often with a high ATAR, and they really appreciate that. A lot of them actually, because of so many choices, they want to do something that's meaningful. They want to pick something that's meaningful, that makes a big difference in the world and to the big problems we face in the world. And agriculture is just an obvious way to do that. I think it's our job to show them that, and it's our job to overcome the stereotype that agriculture equals farming, because the production side is where everything comes from. Arguably the most important part due to that, but it's not the majority of jobs in agriculture, and it's certainly not the jobs our students are going to be going into. And so we need to show them jobs that they can do, and jobs that are in the city as well.
Convincing the students is one thing, but with so many industries competing for talent, there's also the task of convincing the parents that it's a good idea to encourage their children to pursue careers in agriculture.
When they're picking subjects and they're little year 8 students, and their parents are with them and they're thinking, where's my child going to end up? I think the first thing they think is, they're going to have options for their career, nearby, like in the city. And so I guess demonstrating to them what we have curriculum nights, we have an opportunity to present to parents with the students there on what subjects they can do. And so we just show them, here's all the STEM, all the technology, city-based science, business roles in agriculture that are based in cities. And these are just some examples. And I think for us, highlighting our past students and what our past students are doing back to our parents and new students is really helpful, because they see someone like them doing something they can see doing themselves.
And this is why farmers, ag professionals, and industry bodies all have a role to play. Here's Amy Cosby again.
We found in our Ag Knowledge report that there is a significant relationship with students that have visited a farm at least once and their intention to consider a career in agriculture. So we know that it doesn't take that much to get them thinking about ag and what it entails. But there are so many young people that have never stepped foot on a farm or spoken with someone who works in agriculture. Every industry is probably singing out for a workforce, and they think they're the most important. So for us in agriculture, we need to be on the front foot and making it as easy as possible for schools to incorporate agricultural education content into the classrooms and outside of the classrooms as well. So we need to be on the front foot, supporting, opening our doors, offering our services and our knowledge.
So jump at those opportunities to host an excursion and grab the chance to speak at your kids' classroom and share a bit about what you do. And you don't have to be a farmer to do that. You can be anyone in ag industry.
100%. And, schools love that. They love hearing from, because, often you'll also hear from teachers, we tried to teach them that. They didn't listen to us at all. But you come in as a fresh face and someone that has that credibility because you're working in that area. And then all of a sudden they're, all ears and interested.
Back at Barker College on Sydney's North Shore, implementing these sorts of strategies has been working, and the numbers speak for themselves.
So now we have each year anywhere between 350 and 400 students studying agriculture. So we have up to about a third of each year group. So we've got 360 students in each cohort, and up to 120, for example, in year 10, and about 90 to 100 in year 12.
And out of that 90 to 100 in year 12, how many are going to go on and do an ag-related degree?
So typically we have around about 20% of the students who complete agriculture for their HSC in year 12. They will usually kind of go on to agriculture-related degrees at uni, typically, where that's the kind of context of our school, and the students majority go on to university of some description. So those students, those 20% of the ag students going on to university, are typically looking at either ag science or agribusiness. Sometimes veterinary science, those kind of things.
So we're not turning out farmers per se, we're turning out people in the ag-dependent economy, professional services, but they're part of that agriculture ecosystem, aren't they?
One of the goals we set was not to attract the kids that would have traditionally done agriculture anyway, even if we hadn't promoted it. I think you're going to get those students anyway doing it. They're going to choose it anyway. So our goal was to really think about who are the other students in the school that are not doing agriculture, and why are they not doing it? And so we're really kind of targeting them, I think, in terms of showing what careers are available in agriculture that are maybe not what the stereotype might say. So I think all students really need to see the full scope of jobs of what's available to them in agriculture. And I think that blows their mind, in a sense, that they don't realize just all the opportunities. And then I think, the rest of it is good teaching as well. Like they need to come to ag and think, this is my favorite subject I'm looking forward to today.
The majority of jobs are in agriculture are off farm. There's six jobs for every graduate. And just connecting the dots on those two things, when you've got 2/3 of school students in Australia living in a metropolitan area, it's madness not to think about ag in a metro context, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're missing 2/3 of the population. We're trying to effectively get agriculture staffed and run with, students that live outside of cities. Like in New South Wales, 2/3 of the students studying the HSC for agriculture don't live in Sydney, but 2/3 of the students in New South Wales live in Sydney. So it's the wrong way around. Like, as you mentioned, we need to be showing the opportunities to metropolitan students, because it's a massively untapped resource for the future of agriculture.
Which brings us back to the National School Strategy launched by the 15 RDCs last month. How does it cater for the range of operating contexts across Australia? The difference in resourcing between public and private, the economic and cultural differences between metro, regional and rural areas, or the individual teacher knowledge and experience. Brooke Hermans from RMCG explains how the strategy dealt with that challenge.
The way that food and fibre education is taught in schools is different in South Australia versus Queensland versus Western Australia. In fact, the way that they translate the Australian curriculum into the state curriculum is different. The support mechanisms they have, the commodities that are grown in their local areas, all of those things are variable. So one of the things that we've done in the strategy is said whatever governance we have, it needs to have input from state representatives because we know that those environments are different. And also we've tried to focus on opportunities to do those things that can be done locally. So, for example, the School Industry Connections program that we've proposed, that could be about connecting. So I live in Northeast Victoria. So it could be about connecting the local King Valley vignerons with the school in Wangaratta. It's about those local relevant real life connections. So bringing real life examples into the classrooms. But there's one of the things I heard throughout the engagement is don't just give us more resources. Don't just give us more lesson plans. We actually need someone to connect with us individually. So, we need those school industry connections, or we need one-on-one support where someone tells us where to find stuff. Teachers are really time poor, so they need as much support as they can, and it needs to be ready-made and easy for them to access. That doesn't say that we shouldn't produce resources, because absolutely we should, there's a place for those and they are being used, but we need to give teachers other ways to engage and to provide them with support.
For all the doom and gloom of the Hanrahans out there proclaiming we'll all be ruined, there's lots to be optimistic about, particularly when all 15 RDCs are throwing their weight behind this new National Schools Food and Fibre Strategy. And while this is the end of Season 1 of Unearthed, the show is not over. As we head into summer, we've prepared a special series for your holiday listening of 5 fascinating one-on-one conversations with the change makers of Australian agriculture. The theme of our change makers conversations is crash or crash through. We know disruption doesn't come easy, and making change happen can reap huge rewards, but it can also come at a personal and financial cost. Meet the leaders who are changing the direction of Australian agriculture and hear their experiences and insights in navigating the pitfalls of pursuing new opportunities and big ideas. That's the Unearthed Summer Series, Changemakers, coming to you from AgriFutures Australia.